So, hello everyone. Welcome to another Mossy Earth podcast. I'm Duarte and I'm here with Matt. And together we started Mossy Earth. So, we do a lot of rewilding projects. And in this podcast, we generally try to cover what our work is doing, what impact we are having, and how our projects are going. And in the episode that we have today, we're essentially going to try to cover more or less what we've done in the last month. It's a bit of a field report. And essentially, we're going to be following a document that our members receive every month called the Field Report. That is a really nice read, I think. So if you want to essentially consider this podcast as a companion to the beautiful field report done by Ria and Tim, then I think that would be sort of a good way to think about it.
Yeah, and so which podcast number is it? We are number 3.
Number 3.
Indeed, number 3. And the field report, just to add a bit more context, that's something we've been doing since the beginning, isn't it? You know, that was since our first projects, we would send out a monthly update. It's come on a long way, much thanks to Ria and Tim. It's this wonderful PDF document that one can download. I sort of imagine downloading it, and then once you have time, I don't know, on a Sunday with a coffee, just sitting back and going through it. It's really nice, really well written, really well presented and designed. So if you haven't yet checked out our field report, be sure to do so.
And I would just add that, I think it's part of this sort of our attempt at providing different ways for you to digest the content of our projects and to catch up with the work that we are doing, and that your money as a Mossy Earth member is having in terms of impact. So it's, I think, just a different way to consume it. But hopefully with this podcast, we're able to provide a little bit of a complementary insight to that field report.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, actually, because I have a few friends and family who are members, and it's funny how they all consume what we're doing in different ways. You know, some are just dedicated to YouTube, some are dedicated to the emails, the updates. Others, perhaps now they'll get on board with the podcast. So it's really cool. Some are in their accounts looking at the feed report. So I think it's important we have these different ways one can consume all of our stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So shall we get cracking, Matt?
Well, I was going to say, as we've started the other podcast. Where are you? Where are you sitting? I can't see you, but I like to live vicariously through your adventurous life, Duarte. So tell me where you are.
Same place, Matt. Same place, but it's sunny today. Although
Okay.
I do have an extra layer on, and now there are metal studs on my tires. So that should tell you a little bit where things are headed over here in northern Norway.
I thought you were going to say your shoes. I imagined you in a pair of sort of like athletic
not yet.
track shoes.
I'll reserve that probably for a month from now. I'll be getting to this bit here with studs on my shoes. But I'm just sat on my usual rock. There's a nice snowy mountain behind me. It wasn't snowy in our last podcast, so again, that should tell you where things are headed. And all around a lovely day. What about you, Matt?
No.
I hear bells.
Yes, so I'm back on my land where I've done the last 2 podcasts, and I've shifted for a couple of reasons. One, I'm sitting under a big tree because rain is forecast, so fingers crossed it doesn't come in before the podcast is finished. And then the other thing is I wanted to show you a couple of bits and pieces, a little bit of rewilding on my land. So I bought this land about 2.5 years ago, and this flat area, which is next to a stream, was had been grazed on with sheep. So everything was gnawed to the bare minimum. And this tree next to me, which is about 1.5 meters high, this is naturally regenerated in that 2.5 years. And the same behind me, and I'm pretty sure it's a wild plum. It's either wild plum or elm. I've got to confirm, but I imagine it's the plum because there's fruit trees all along this stream. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was this year is what they call a masting year, where oaks give out more acorns than normal. So it's like an overabundance of acorns. And I'm just surrounded by them. Loads of them on the floor here. So it's pretty cool. And me and my little boy have been collecting them, planting them up, and then planting them on other areas of the land, because this is the only oak tree that's dropping oak. So this is the neighbours, but it's leaning over and giving us oak. So I'm spreading them on the land.
Sounds
so
like it won't be alone for long if you
I know, right? Yeah. And lastly, the cows behind me. So my neighbour has cattle. And he has a large farm. So these cows roam around with their bells on. It's quite a nice sound. Well, I find it quite relaxing.
Very, very idyllic. Let's hope everyone else also agrees as they hear bells through the whole podcast. Cool.
So yeah.
Let's jump in.
Yeah, let's jump in. So the first project in the monthly field report was the coral restoration project that we actually talked a lot about in the last podcast, more in terms of how it was filmed, etc. But yeah, where are we at with the coral restoration project?
So we've completed the first area, which is really exciting. It was hard to convey the size of the areas properly, on the video when we made it, but we tried to show it with those sort of 3D renderings. But it's a really big area, and from the videos I've been seeing from Yudi and Chansa, it's just a huge network of metal and freshly attached corals that is now covering what used to be a pretty ugly rubble patch. So really excited to have completed the first area. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's slightly above 1,000 structures that we've had to use. Yeah, here 1,470 structures. So that's a lot of progress on there. And since our last video, we've been working even harder on our experimentation in terms of attachment methods. So actually, this was something that we were perfectly aware right from the get-go, that we were going to want to experiment with different attachment methods to try to avoid having to use plastic in our project. But we've accelerated that process thanks to a really wonderful feedback loop through the comments that we have received on our videos, particularly the videos in our Field Notes channel. So if you're not aware, we have a second YouTube channel called Mossy Earth Field Notes, and there we post these sort of more raw versions of the on-the-ground work. Usually we try to do about an update for every main hub where we've built our own team every month, to really keep you up to date with the nitty-gritty of what's going on. And in this latest vlog, Yudi essentially went through, the whole zip tie situation. So how we are recycling the leftover bits of the zip ties, to the logic behind using different materials, and how our trial is going with the cotton twine and the hemp. And so far, it seems that we found a few different solutions. Cotton twine is useless. Hemp seems to be quite decent for fast-growing corals, like the Acropora corals. And recently, we, after a tip from a member, we found metal zip ties, and those are quite tricky to attach corals with, but they've been quite good to keep structures together. So that's already like half of all the zip ties we would use gone.
Sure.
So it's sort of a process, and all people have been talking about more organic types of plastic. People have been talking about some type of wire you can twist. So it's about balancing sort of how much time it takes to do things underwater, because of course that has a footprint as well, and how good things are at ensuring that the coral attaches, and of course how biodegradable the material is. So it's a tricky trade-off, but I think we're making progress on that.
Yeah, and I think what is nice is that all of our projects are sort of an open book, where we invite our community to, if they've got these suggestions. So nothing's set in stone, is it? So again, just echoing your point, we're very appreciative of these insights that people have been putting via the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my camera, Matt, because it's getting sunnier and sunnier by the minute.
Oh, living the dream. I can see these big black ominous clouds brewing my way. So I almost called Duarte last night to cancel this morning, because I received on my telephone a wind and rain warning, but it hasn't come in just yet. So calm before the storm.
Sorry, I'll correct myself, Matt. I got wonderful sun on the right side, but on the left side I also have ominous dark clouds. So it's Norway after all.
But actually, going back to some friends and family members that are Mossy Earth members, somebody recently asked me, so you finished the first rubble area, when does that sort of when can you regard that as a success? And I caught up with Chancer a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me that on average it takes between sort of 3 and 6 months for the coral fragments to really embed and settle on the structures, and then perhaps 2 to 3 years for the whole area to return to a healthy functioning coral, give or take, depending on various variables. But yeah, it's I find it impressive how quickly, if all goes well, that it can restore itself.
No, exactly, and actually there's that also really reflects how much we have to take care of them. So if we sort of take care of an area for the first 6 months by scrubbing off these algae and by essentially replacing some of the corals which die, we are able to really get the job done after six months and a bit, because then the structures themselves, where there are no coral pieces attached, get covered in a different type of algae called coralline algae. And this is, as the name sort of indicates, an algae that coexists very well with the coral. So they're actually like helping the coral. So after about 6 months, we don't need to worry so much about this anymore. So we can move on. But there is a big follow-up effort still to be done in Area 1, where we'll have to keep scrubbing it for a while. But it's the biggest part of the effort is done.
And the scrubbing, is it a toothbrush? How sort of labor intensive is that process?
It's pretty labor intensive. It's like a metal brush, and you gotta you really get in there and scrub all the bits around. And there's a lot of structures, and each structure has a lot of surface area. So yeah, there's a bit to it, but they're getting it done.
Yeah, and what amazes me about this project, and we've mentioned it in other podcasts, is just the efficiency of it, the sort of production line of getting the raw materials, making them into structures, storing the structures, getting the structures out, collecting the fragments, attachment. Yeah, it's I find it really impressive how sort of linear and efficient the process has been thus far. Touch wood, there aren't any unexpected blockers for the next rubble areas.
Yeah, of course. Shall we move on to the Amazon, Matt?
Yes. I'll just double check. There was one other update. Was we have a new scientific advisor on our board of advisors for this project. So Ellie and Tiago, who are responsible for the sort of scientific part of all of our projects, are creating board of advisors for each hub. And we recently took on Matt Fines, who coincidentally, it actually came through a friend of a friend, and when I had a call with him, we realised that we were at university at the same time, in the same group of friends, so no doubt partied together, but that was a long time ago. And yeah, he's got a hugely extensive knowledge and experience in coral reefs across the globe, and already, in the short time he's been with us, has given some really great insights for the team to then look into. So yeah, welcome to the team, Matt, and yeah, really appreciate the help you're giving us. So yeah, over to Ecuador.
Where I guess the biggest bit of news really is that we bought another piece of land. It's around 15 hectares. I think, as we mentioned before, the whole point of this project is not to just buy land, but when it is strategic and it feels urgent, we do think it is important to do so. So this 15 hectare piece came up for sale, attached essentially to our land. So we felt it was important to make sure that didn't go to an up and coming cattle farmer or something like that. And we actually made a deal with the family. They got to keep a portion of the land because essentially they wanted to sell because they live in the city now, but they have an emotional attachment to the land. And they essentially sold us all the rainforest bits and kept their house and the bit that they wanted to keep. So I think it's a really cool deal where they can stay connected and the children of that family can stay connected with the land for the future, while they also get what they wanted out of it, which is the money. So it meant that they sort of didn't really have to compromise as much, and I think that's pretty cool.
Really cool. And when you mentioned whether it makes sort of strategic sense or whether it's whether there's an urgency, we had a couple of comments saying, why don't we just keep buying land to protect, And yeah, what are some of those things that would make it urgent? You know, you say being sold to a cattle farmer or...
I mean, I think the main thing is location, right? So this is exactly in our core area of intervention, which is the border of the Yasuni National Park with essentially this where it gets close to this oil road that has a lot of illegal spread of settlers. So essentially, we are. I think buying this land is because it's exactly in the core area we are trying to help. So it's very relevant to the project. And I think there's just a big risk at this stage before we are able to build out more of capacity on the tourism side of things, that the economic incentives lean a lot more towards cattle farming and cacao plantations than they lean towards doing something that could keep the rainforest standing, whether that be like a better crop like vanilla, or whether that be tourism or something like that. So it's going to take time to build this. So like if these properties that aren't excessively expensive come up, we quickly snap them up, I think, in our core project area. I'll have you know, Matt, it's actually snowing right now. Just so things have taken a turn, but it's kind of that wet snow, you know. So we'll see where things go from here.
I think just on that. Sorry, just on that land purchase, the last point, another opportunity to thank the members who contributed so quickly through the Fund Extra part of the membership. Yeah, the turnaround to raise those funding was it was really inspiring and surprised us. So yeah, very grateful for those that helped fund that recent purchase.
Yeah, exactly. That's also what I wanted to say. Like we were at some point in our history not so sure whether members liked us buying land, and actually the fastest thing we've ever funded in this Fund Extra section in the account has been the purchase of the land. We got the money so fast, and it was really nice because our budget, rewilding budget, has a lot of demands on it. So this was quite a way to sort of make it a no-brainer to be able to buy this land.
Yeah, very cool.
And in terms of what type of land it is, it's just mostly pretty intact rainforest. We can't call it virgin because certainly there's been cutting in there in the past. Probably the big valuable trees are gone already for a while, but it's very intact. It's fantastic forest. So it's a really great addition to the bit that we are protecting.
Cool. And last night I saw a lovely picture of this weekend or these next days is a birding event that Freddie's been organising, and a group of local children from a local school were all stood up in line, and then some sort of bird enthusiasts. So it's an event to share what we're doing with the local children, but also get involved in a bit of bird watching. And on one of the days there's the annual bird count via the eBird app, which is a citizen science app. But it was really cool to see the local children taking part in the event. So hats off to all the work that Freddie's been doing to organise that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all it's all different little pieces of the puzzle that need to come together to get it done. And just one other bit that actually one other update from the Amazon is that we've been considering more and more on how to use this area that we have for rescued wildlife. So there is unfortunately still a lot of poached wildlife, not just killed but also stolen to be used as pets and so on, and often they can be released back, and this is something that Freddie has done for years. He actually, shortly after I was there last time, confiscated a small golden mantle tamarind and released it back onto our land. He confiscated it off someone who was going through the road, and you could see the the little golden mantle tamarind. So it's also sort of a worthwhile addition to try to create this this safe haven for rehabilitated wildlife. But we'll let you know when that when our first rehabilitated animal actually gets released there. Yeah, and as I understand, that could also be for animals that have perhaps been hit by a car. Or,
it doesn't mean they've been poached. Yeah, it's right. Yeah.
So really another nice addition, isn't it? It's really cool. Anything else from Ecuador on your side?
No, let's move on to the ecology side of things.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, they've just finished drone mapping to see the extent of the seagrasses in the firths. Drones we use a lot, right? They've been hugely important in all of our projects. Do you want to sort of delve into a little bit about the importance of drones, why we use them?
Well, I think that like with how good they've become in terms of the resolution of the cameras and how good the software to process this kind of information has become with, the advancements in AI and whatnot. Essentially, it becomes a lot easier to design to photograph all of this from above with a custom designed pathway for the drone to follow, and then to stitch it all together and actually interpret what you found instead of you sort of like painstakingly looking through it. You actually can use an algorithm to determine like how much coverage of seagrass there is in an area, or how much rainforest is covering your land, or in Tiago's case in the cliffs, certain different species, like be able to actually count the individuals of a certain native species or where there are still invasive species, so being able to distinguish the plants. There's really a lot to it, so they're quite useful.
Really interesting. They've come on a long way since the first drone that we bought, which was the first purchase with our rewilding impact budget, wasn't it, back in 2017?
Yes, our little green useless thingy.
It was good at the time, but yeah, we've had a few drones since then. Also in the Cromarty Seascape hub, the team recently visited a local school, and incidentally that was where Isla went to school, and they've had some early talks with teachers to understand how they can collaborate and get the students more involved in conservation, more involved in our projects, and Isla really likes this idea because, as she says, when she was growing up in the Black Isle, it was very difficult to find opportunities to get involved in conservation. She knew she wanted to work in conservation in some sense, but couldn't find these opportunities. So to be able to give back and to give back to the school where she's grown up, I think she's really enthusiastic about the project.
Yeah, that's very cool. And maybe that's something we've actually not mentioned, or there is an additional side to this that we've not mentioned, is also the fact that we got a grant for the work up in Scotland. So one of the ways that we are trying to leverage essentially the money that we have to spend on impact is by also essentially using our time to apply for grants to do parts of the work, and the team in the Cromarty Seascape Project has succeeded in getting a grant from the Nature Restoration Fund. So that's what's been funding a lot of this work, and it's been a really nice sort of step forward to have our budget act as sort of the Kickstarter for bigger things. It means that essentially every pound that we spend there is being leveraged, right? It's quite nice from an economics of Mossy Earth perspective.
And I mean, we're 7 years in, and it's our first grant, and during those 7 years we observed other conservation organisations where perhaps grants they apply for more grants, and it's constantly this sort of game, isn't it, of how much time one has to put into writing a grant versus the reward. So it's no easy feat. There's a lot of competitions in this for these grants. There's a way you have to write grants, and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. So it's really cool that they got it first time round.
Yeah, exactly. And they're applying for more because there's more work to be done. So, and more opportunity to leverage this. That's quite exciting. And maybe on the oyster front, we can also mention that we had a slight bureaucratic setback. So you wouldn't imagine the mountain of paperwork required to get some our oyster nursery in the water, and the amount of different elements which need to converge. I view it a bit as like Saturn, the moon, Jupiter, and something else like aligning, and then you can get your oysters in the water. and Isla has been the one trying to wrangle this Kafkaesque amount of paperwork into place, and she's been doing a great job. But we've had another delay, which will have to push the actual oyster nursery going in the water by some more months. But that's the nature of things, and we're in this for the long haul, so it doesn't really matter in some way, because we can continue to focus on other things. There's other things for us to work on, and when the time finally comes we can put this in the water, we will.
Touch wood, it's by the end of the year, but as you say, it's not the end of the world. We're here for the long term. So
exactly. Shall we move on to the red kites, Matt?
I forget if we had mentioned in our first podcast Josie joining the team. So Josie's recently joined the team. So my dad brain, I forget if we had announced she is part of the team or not. So if we hadn't, Josie, we're sorry, but there's Josie, Francis and Isla working there in the Cromarty. And also I wanted to give a mention to Emily, which is Francis's partner, who's also been helping out on some of the seagrass stuff. And a bit like Udo and Claudia here in Portugal, Francis and Emily are a brilliant sort of double act. They keep one another in check. Thanks again, Emily, for the help there in the Cromarty as well. So next up is the red kites. And this project's actually quite close to my heart, because I was quite involved in it when it started 3 years ago, and in that time I've become really good friends with the project partners, Alfonso and Caterina, another married couple in the rewilding space that work very well together. And so it was originally a 3-year project with the idea of translocating 30 red kites from the UK to an area in Spain, 30 each year, to bring the red kite populations back in Spain. And what I found very nice about the story was that you rewind about 30 years ago, and red kite numbers in the UK, I think they've gotten down to just one pair remaining, and they were quite abundant still in Spain. And there was a project to translocate red kites to the UK to help populations there in the UK. 30 years later, the red kite population is booming and healthy in the UK, but in that time the Spanish population had demised due to various reasons. So it's a nice way now. The UK are giving some of those red kites back that still have that Spanish DNA, if you like, back to Spain to help the populations there. It's a wonderful project, and as I say, it's close to my heart. I was involved a lot in the first year, but so we're into our 3rd year, and just been doing some releases. What has happened over the last couple of years is we've changed the strategy of releasing. So in the first year when I was there, we sort of released all the birds in one go, in one morning, but we're now doing it in staggered releases and in different locations, because there was some predation on some of the young birds. There was a notorious eagle owl. I'd never heard of them, and actually, if you're listening, Google a picture of them. They're really beautiful.
They look fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, and enormous as well. And they were taking out these young red kites. Alfonso and Caterina, they actually caught the eagle owl and translocated him somewhere else to take the pressure off the red kites. But there's been some predation, so strategy has changed. Different locations, staggered releases, and then also we're going to add on an additional 4th year to help supplement those red kite numbers. But overall the project has been a success, and some of the young red kites have already nested with wild red kites. So the process is beginning, and hopefully we'll see those red kite stocks back to healthy numbers in the near future.
Yeah, and I would add just that if you want to see a little bit more in depth what this release looked like, again I refer you to our Field Notes channel, where Flora went and attended these releases, and she documented it all in a lovely vlog that you can see there. So that's a cool way to catch up with the project as well.
And I think the other part is that these red kites are GPS tagged, and the GPS tags are really useful in understanding what dangers the birds face. So if there is mortality, which there has been in some, the GPS tag leads us to the to where the bird is, and we can then understand if that was predation, whether it was poisoning. And sadly, there still are some farmers that are poisoning, but the police, particularly on the Spanish side, have been very good in chasing up those farmers. Also, faulty electric lines. So there are some pylons that can kill birds, and if we know it's a pylon, then Alfonso and Caterina can contact the local electric companies, which they have been doing, and they'll head on out and fix those pylons to prevent future birds, not just the red kite, but other birds, from being zapped by the pylons. So yeah, the GPS tags are really, really important in that sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, without data, you'd be operating in the dark, right? You'd just be releasing birds and hoping for the best, and that's not the point of any of these projects. Good conservation and rewilding work needs to be above water legally, and it needs to be properly monitored from a scientific perspective. Otherwise, you're never going to make it long lasting.
I remember Alfonso telling me a story that again, him and Caterina had been tagging I think it was sea eagles, and they'd tagged this one sea eagle and they'd seen it flown over to Morocco, and then the GPS tag it just stayed in one position, which suggested that the bird was dead. So they headed over to Morocco and they went looking for this GPS tag, and they found it, and it was below an electric pylon, and much to their horror, just surrounding this electric pylon was every type of bird of prey, vultures, eagles, everything else, kites, all dead. It was like this sort of cemetery of birds of prey that had been zapped by this pylon. But it meant that they could contact the electrical company in Morocco, and that got fixed, and just to help prevent further destruction of birds. So yeah, that little story just really rang home for me when he was telling me that.
I'll have you know, Matt,
cool.
Just as an update on the weather, because we are stubborn and we do these podcasts outside. I'm now in a full snowstorm. It's like full on coming down. Very, very interesting. I wonder if it comes across on the camera, but I mean, its camera's getting covered in snowflakes, so I'm sure it does to some extent. So we have now in our field report, the next segment is sort of this rewilding roundup, right? So maybe we can do it rapid fire.
Yep. Green gravel.
Batch from last year got destroyed with the winter storms. There are many theories as to what the issues might have been. One of the leading theories is that essentially the gravel falls between the cracks on the rock, and then it actually settles in the bottom between the cracks in a way that is not necessarily conducive to the kelp then actually attaching to the rock itself, because it's in these holes where there's also a little bit less light and so on. So it moves about a lot more. So there's been a couple of thoughts. One, deploying the kelp a little bit for a little bit more grown. Two, deploying it in bags together, in these big sausage bags of green gravel still. And three, attaching the kelp directly manually to the rock. It's of course a lot more labor intensive, but it might be what sort of kickstarts it. So essentially right now with that project, it's all about tweaking survival rates, and that's something that Sea Foresters is working hard on at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, just on a wider point, that this project was set up as a trial, wasn't it? And that's the importance of trials, is sometimes there's success, sometimes you fail, but without trials we're not learning. So
exactly, like the green gravel essentially was proven to work and the kelp survives, so it's past sort of stage one, the most basic part of a trial, but then sort of stage two, whether it actually is able to form a kelp forest, that's the bit that's failed right now. So we're working essentially on the next step, the scaling up of this.
Okay. Over to selvaging, where we're looking to help preserve, protect rare plant species and a beetle species.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of our work with these, what did we call them originally, Matt? The ugly ones, The
ugly ones.
The little boring, misunderstood, not so interesting species that are still worth protecting, because every species is worth protecting. And it's a bit of a continuation of that.
But they're underfunded.
Underfunded, yes, that's a key component of this, yes. So yeah, essentially the story for us with this started with the snails that we've made 3 videos about on our YouTube channel. It's essentially 4 species of snail that are native to the Desertas Islands in near Madeira, and are by the time that we started helping were nearly extinct. So we've been funding the expeditions for a team to collect them and bring them back to different zoos in the UK to breed them and then eventually reintroduce them. I hope to be there for that when that happens. And then this is now a continuation of that work with the same team, with Dinart and so on. And they are now working in the selvagens with these 2 plants and with a beetle that only exists on those islands. So it has a lot of the same problems with the invasives. So yeah, the idea is really to try and secure these populations before they go extinct. It is a real race against extinction.
And the first thing that sort of sprang to my mind back when we were looking at the snails on this uninhabited island off the coast of Madeira, and now these Selvagen islands are even further away, is why why is it so important that we sort of race against the extinction of a beetle? To most people is unbeknown, these rare plant species. Yeah, why is that?
Well, from my perspective, it has its own little role to play in the ecosystem. And to quote maybe like what was it when they asked I don't remember which climber why they wanted to climb Everest. They said, well, because it's there. Why protect it?
Yeah.
Well, because it's there. I don't know. It seems worthwhile, and often biodiversity might be important in ways that you don't necessarily know about in advance. So there's a ton of innovation to come out of genetic variation. So there's a lot of opportunity you miss by losing different branches of the tree of life. Opportunity to do meaningful things for us humans as well, if we need to take that sort of more human-centered view. Like the plant, for instance, that we are helping save in the sea cliffs in Portugal. That plant, it has some properties that could be useful for cancer treatment. Not being used right now, but it is
Sure.
being researched in that direction. That thing lives on like one cliff face that is being overrun by invasives, right? So like, if that goes extinct, maybe that opportunity goes extinct, and that's, I think, the kind of example, if you want to take a human-centric view. But for me, it's because it's there, and because because we ruined it, and because I think it would be cool if it was still around.
Yeah, I remember your brother Tiago, one of our conservation biologists, when we were looking at the cave cleanup project in Croatia to help protect the Ohm, which if those of you that don't know, it's this small, looks like a dragon, it's pink, blind. I believe it can even go without eating for 10 years or something, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. But this weird and wonderful creature that lives in a cave system in the middle of Croatia, I remember saying to Tiago, just sort of playing devil's advocate, why should we protect it? And he said, the genetic makeup of this creature is so different from anything else on the planet. You lose that, and you as you said, you lose this sort of branch of the tree of life forever. And I also believe he told me that David Attenborough had said if he had a Noah's Ark, that would be one of the 10. So just on that note, it's worth protecting. So yes, that's. Oh, sorry.
There was a documentary that
Ah.
they had, a documentary called the Attenborough's Ark. So like 10 species he was put in his ark, something like that.
No, check that out if you've not seen it. Anything else from the Selvagens? No, I think we're covered there. Other quick update. So there was a community event in Italy where we have the Crayfish Project. By all accounts, it was a successful weekend of engaging the local community, helping them sort of reconnect with the river system there and the crayfish as a species. There was anything from traditional foods, dancing, workshops about what's happening there, just to sort of raise engagement and awareness levels. And I thought, that for me is just as important as the interventions themselves, and I was reflecting on what the team are doing here in Portugal. This hub here we have to protect the River Mirror. That's one of the sort of things they'll be doing as well, is to create these events to help reconnect people with the river. Talking to many people in the area, the river was a really important part of people's lives, for many generations. In the last probably 2 or 3 generations, people are being less connected to the river. Just funnily enough, I live in a valley, and there's a stream that runs through the village, and some of the older people, and this river actually cuts through my land, so the older people in the village, they've shown me, in fact, they took great joy in showing me where their stone, where they used to wash their clothes on and where they used to bath. So the rivers used to be really important for washing themselves, washing clothes, picking edible plants, fishing, all of these types of things, whereas now nobody really connects with the river. So these types of events, in summary, are just as important as the interventions themselves.
Well summarized, Matt.
Yes.
So
I'm sort of conscious of your sort of. I can imagine you just your head is popping out the snow.
no, it's not sticking. That's the problem. If it was like sticky snow, it'd be wonderful. It's still this sort of early season wet snow, So actually, the main situation is it just makes everything very wet. It's a bit like it looks beautiful when it falls, but then it's just rain. But no, it's completely fine. We can take our time. Our next update is about the European suslik. So these are the ground squirrels. We've made some videos on YouTube about this. It's a popular project where essentially we've been translocating them from a population that has been doing quite well near Bratislava airport, and reintroducing them in various areas where the suslik population is down quite a bit, or in new areas where they used to exist. So for context, this species lives very well in this sort of traditional agricultural landscape where there would have been cleared fields, essentially this type of grassland, like agro-pastoral grasslands. They thrived alongside humans in those conditions, but when we've turned first in Eastern Europe to communism, and there was a lot of essentially these fields all came together, and we started getting these humongous properties. This reduced the diversity massively, and now it's something that the European Union is promoting. They love a good huge monoculture field. This just puts further pressure on the susliks. So essentially our work is to translocate them, to essentially try to improve the chances of this creature in Slovakia, which is one of the only countries where the populations are growing. They've gone extinct in so many places in Europe. So the work that Broz is doing here is fantastic, and I think it's making really meaningful progress to secure the future for the suslik.
And I think that a sort of surprise for a number of people was the translocation to the airport. That just doesn't seem to make sense, but actually once you start digging, it really does make sense, doesn't it?
Better even, Matt, from an airport to an airport, so, but, from one where there's Ryanair flights to one where there's just a local aviation club. It was actually quite a funny, deal, because it was like the aviation club, it was, they were going to lose it, but because of the ground squirrels, they were able to keep the aviation club because it's a protected species that couldn't be, so the area couldn't be developed. So they got what they wanted. They could still have their sort of aviation area, and the ground squirrel got what it wanted too, which is a great place to live alongside the airplane. So it's quite a funny deal that happened there.
Yeah, because despite the noise of the airplanes, the ground squirrels are otherwise left alone, aren't they?
Yeah, but great place to live. Yeah, great place to live.
I remember when we used to work in Ireland, and I'd go over there to visit the project. Going into Dublin Airport, I remember reading about Dublin Airport has quite a lot of biodiversity in the sort of grassy areas of the airport compared to some of the rest of Ireland. It's a great place for hares because again they're not bothered there. They live out quietly next to the noise of the airplanes. But,
I mean, it's quite brutal when you think about it, though. Like that wildlife gets pushed so much to the margins that an airport is like a decent place. But it is what it is, and you got to play with what you have. So
Sure.
Yeah, that's how we got there. Mountain birch, Matt.
Mounted birch.
So essentially,
Next one.
yeah, that's just Gus has continued the seed collection, and I think that's the the key update for now. This is the season where you collect seeds. So to remind people, this is our project to help save these birch that live. Actually, I got a forest of mountain birch right up there that's getting like heavily snowed on. I'm pointing at it right now on the camera. And it's actually really fun to see here in Norway. They have these complete forests of mountain birch. So they're birch that live at altitude. They're small. They're all twisted. They're like wonderfully different from these tall, straight birch that you would get sort of down in the valleys. And that's something that in Scotland is kind of completely gone through different pressures. So Gus is one of the people trying to save mountain birch, and we're supporting his work in collecting seed for this.
Good stuff.
Finally, shall we go to the tires? Yeah?
Yes, yeah, last but not least. Yeah, really fun project. It was a weekend only a couple of weeks ago where a local climbing group from Azoya went down to a almost inaccessible beach near to where our invasive ice plant removal project is that Tiago had set up, and it was to remove all of these tires, 50 or 60 of them I believe, that had been dumped there, and I think it was just a really nice day out. I funny enough, I know some of the climbers, and they said it was a wonderful day out, but it's cool that we're able to help empower and raise awareness so that local groups can get involved in this type of thing, because I know there's a real appetite, particularly from outdoor groups, to do more for the environment, but yeah, sometimes they don't know where to go, how to get started, perhaps obviously lack the funding as well. So, and what was ironic, nobody from Mossy was able to attend. We had hoped to, but for various reasons, some of us were off, some of us were doing other things. But that for me made it even cooler, because we were able to have this impact without actually even having to be there. So yeah, I look fondly on that project.
No, exactly, and you know, to give people the sort of clear view on it, this was not an easy feat. These tires were initially like stuck in some kind of ravine, and they had to be like extracted from there. They are super big, heavy tires. There was a load of them, and they had to first get them to the beach, and then they had to load them onto the boats and so on, and to get them out of there. And so we were able to support with the costs of the boat and so on, but it was just cool to get the climbing community to do tough work to get this done and get this area in a better state. I think it's a really wonderful collaboration.
Yeah, I was just double checking. Yeah, 50 kilos each tire.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty chunky. That's pretty chunky.
But those climbers are strong, aren't they?
They are indeed. Cool. That's the end of our field report. I'm now soaked through. The wonderful snow swirls have turned into just pure depressing rain once more. You can never trust the forecast in Norway. But any final thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to, as we said at the beginning, just thank Tim and Ria who have made this field report something really special. I really look forward to reading it, you know, despite being kept up to date on a weekly basis through Mossy calls and meetings and stuff. I still like to sit down with this field report. So if you're someone that's not consumed it in this way, be sure to download it and take the time to read through it. Last couple of podcasts, we've sort of what's coming up at Mossy Earth or revealing anything. Is there anything to reveal this time round?
Well, I think in our next podcast we will probably, or either in the next one or the one after, we will be attempting to introduce people to most of the team in one go, which will be quite exciting, because we rarely are able to show who is behind the work at Mossy Earth, unless you're a biologist and you've shown up in a video, or me, that I stand in front of the camera quite a lot. So I think it'll be quite cool to tell people what the different jobs are at Mossy Earth and yeah, how they contribute to our objectives, to our work.
Yeah, and how they got into this field as well. I know that's a common question, you know, how does one get into conservation? How does one get into rewilding? So yeah, perhaps we ask them that as well. Oh,
and maybe just one last note. Last podcast we talked about this rewilding documentary. We got a ton of useful and very valuable feedback, and we're now following up with certain people to understand their opinions a bit better, and we'll be talking about our proposed path forward in a future podcast as well. But it's been wonderful to be able to get like all that feedback right away.
Good stuff. No, really appreciate the input. As we said earlier in this podcast, the input on the the zip ties for coral, now the input for the documentary. Yeah, it's really useful. So appreciate everybody that does give their opinions.
Nice one. Well,
right, I'll let you get home and dry off.
Yes, and thank you everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you have any feedback for us, as usual, please leave it maybe under a comment on YouTube or on Spotify, where there's also comments. You can also rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, etc. That always helps us maybe reach more people. And nice twist of fate, Matt. The sun is shining right now, so it's wonderful.
There we go.
Wonderful again. Okay, thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Cheers.
Cheers.